Everybody
Talking
smile.
Alabama,
There we go.
Alabama talk here. All right. All right. Well, hey, good day, y'all. Appreciate you guys joining us. This is going to be a really exciting session. Got somebody very special here to talk about some exciting trends in sales and marketing in particular. So welcome to the Building Your Roadmap to Endless Customers. And we are excited and pumped to have Connor DeLaney. He is an Endless Customers advisor to this awesome book that I'm absolutely obsessed um, with us today. And it's about becoming the most trusted brand in hospitality. So without further ado, I am Corey Falter. I am the current president of HSMAI here in sunny San Diego. And I'm joined by Kimberly Hensley. She's our director at large, and she's going to help moderate this amazing session. So take it away, Kimberly.
Yes. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I will be watching the chat, and then we will relay them to Connor. And I know, Connor, you're going to be watching the chat as well, but we
Nice.
definitely want this to be interactive. So if you want to come off mute and ask a question, please fire away, and then we will have a great conversation today. So, Connor, I'm going to turn it over to you and take it away.
Easy enough. We keep the conga line going. And thank
Yeah.
you both and appreciate the crew that's come out today. And, as Kim said, like part of the presentation today is actually, have a conversation to be diving into different topics and ideas around becoming a more known and trusted brand. And so what I'd ask of all of you is continue to bring questions, bring ideas, engage in the chat as we get rocking and rolling, because that's going to make this as valuable and insightful over the next hour or so as possible. There will be plenty of moments and times where I will stop and make sure, hey, if there were questions or ideas that we dive into them. But Kim, what I would encourage you is if there is a timely question in the meantime, don't save it until the end. Don't save it until I say it. If there's something up there and someone says, hey, can you talk more about this? Let's make sure that's happening throughout. I'm not sticking to a script, so I want to make sure we have that conversation. But that would be the expectation, what I would ask of all of you. In the meantime, this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about how to become the most known and trusted brand in your market and to build a roadmap to endless customers, as Corey had teed up for us. And as we're diving into this topic, across B2B, B2C, every industry, every business, big and small, there's three fundamental truths that are shifting the way that we are having to operate as buyers and as consumers. And I want to introduce all three of those because they set the foundation for what this entire next hour or so is actually going to be about and what we're going to be able to accomplish together. So I'm going to dive right on into number one. And what that is 60% of online searches end without a click. What does this mean for our businesses, especially as we think about the hospitality space, but even beyond? If 60% of online searches end without a click, it means no longer are we clicking on that big blue link anymore, or for some of us, the purple link. No longer are people actually ending up on our websites. Instead, what's happening is they're learning the information and not interacting with your brand. And that's causing a fundamental shift. We're seeing traffic go down. We're seeing leads through our website go down because buyers are no longer required to enter your website in order to buy from us. And there, there's a fundamental shift in terms of why this is taking place, because this 5 years ago, 99% of online searches ended with a click. Why is there such a quick and rapid switch? It's because there's three fundamental audiences that we have to focus on. In the past, we had our core two. We had customers and we had SEO. We knew that we had to be engaging directly with our customers. We knew that we had to be interacting with them in a way that was human, that we were actually able to speak with them about referrals. That's how we were getting, word of mouth. We were generating all these opportunities there. And SEO was always the name of the game. We had to be ranking high. We had to be winning the keywords, and we had to be the top of the Google search page. What's fundamentally changed is AI has now entered the equation. And we can talk about agentic search, which is, the big scary next thing of, are people even going to have to interact with us ever in order to make buying decisions? But really, AI search has changed the way that we end up actually gathering information and learning from the brands and learning from others in the world. And instead of us having to read an article or watch a video or download a ebook, we can say, hey, AI, can you answer this question for us? And it's going to pull all the information out there to give you the best answer possible. And because of AI becoming more fundamental in how we learn and we understand, SEO is getting hammered. I can imagine most of us are saying, yeah, we've seen our search traffic go down, or we've seen our leads on our website going down. AI is rapidly disrupting these groups. And instead of us ignoring it or saying SEO is going to continue to, it'll find a way, we have to embrace how our buyers are buying. And because of AI and because less people are actually going to websites, what we're seeing is there is a massive trust deficit in the marketplace. What do I mean by a trust deficit? Imagine you're going to be making a buying decision. The last thing you want to do is make a mistake. We are more adverse to making the wrong decision than we as buyers have ever been before. And beyond that, the trust with brands is at an all-time low. And I'd imagine in hospitality as much as anything. And, I'm going to make that generalization because I know most of the audience here lives within that space. There's a massive trust deficit because we've been overpromised and underdelivered before. We've thought we bought the perfect event space, or we thought we bought the perfect piece of technology, and it just doesn't actually end up doing what we need it to do. And instead, what ends up happening is we have buyer's remorse, we have frustration, and because we're afraid of making mistakes, we don't trust the brands that we typically used to work with in the past. And so as we think about where we're going to be going today, how we're going to become that known and trusted brand, there's a mindset that I'm going to ask all of us to have and that we're all going to leave with today, that's going to continue to drive us forward. And it's this quote right here. If we want more customers, we need to stop doing what every other business in our industry is doing. This mindset shift alone is what's changed hundreds of businesses that I've worked with, but it's how businesses today are winning in this ever growing shift with those three key market changes that we just talked about and agreed upon. If we're doing what everyone else is doing, we're never going to stand out. We're going to be another commodity. We're going to be just another piece of paper on a table, another number on a spreadsheet. We're not going to be the brand that we want to be. We're not going to show up in a way that others are going to actually interact and respect us. And frankly, we're not going to become that known and trusted brand in our marketplace. And for us to win, we must be that known and trusted brand. And so over the next, call it 45 minutes or so, I'm going to introduce what we call the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand. And as we dive into each of those 4 pillars, I think it's important that I say, not every example I'm going to share is going to feel one-to-one to exactly how you would do it at your business. My goal for today is to present these 4 pillars in a way that makes you say, I understand the principle and I understand how I'm going to actually make this happen at my business based on some of the examples and the thought processes that we've had. So the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand. Number 1, say what others aren't willing to say. Number 2, show what others aren't willing to show. Number 3, sell in ways that others aren't willing to sell. And number 4, we need to be more human than others are willing to be. Those are going to be what's driving us forward. And again, think back to that quote that we talked a little bit about earlier. We need to stop doing what everyone in every other business is doing in our industry. If that's the focus, that's why you can tell we have to say, show, sell, and be more human than others are willing to be. And again, as I'm going through each of these examples, I want us to be thinking about that quote. But what I'm also going to encourage all of us to do is to think like our buyers do. Think of us as the consumer. It's so easy for us to get blinded by the but we're different complex, the well, that's going to be hard to do complex. And we'll talk about how some of that comes to life and why it's not as easy as everyone says. But if we want to win in the marketplace today, if we want to overcome this shift in AI, if we want to overcome that trust deficit, we have to be willing to implement these 4 pillars. Kim, before I keep going forward, anything in the chat, or are we rocking and rolling?
Nothing in the chat, but I had a question. What do you think led, like, the biggest contributor to leading to a deficit of trust? Was it like actions taken during COVID, or what has made people trust companies less in recent years?
Good question. And there's certainly not any one answer to it either, right? So that trust deficit has come as more and more information has become available out there. There's the biggest one that I've seen is buyers want to be more educated before they make a purchase because now they know that they can be. In the past, you used to go based off of, and actually, this is an interesting point. We've seen as digital and frankly over the last, call it 3 years since AI launched November 2022, people have actually resorted back to the ways they used to buy 20, 25 years ago because they didn't know what was true and what wasn't true. And so it's kind of started to snowball at that moment when people said, yeah, I don't know if like everyone's going to just sound like AI. I don't really know if I want this digital piece. I'm going to ask my neighbor about an experience they had. I'm going to go on these internet forums, a Reddit, a Quora. People started shifting back to, I want to hear from other people what they're doing because that trust in terms of the brands that were doing the right thing or wrong thing was starting to happen. The other piece is there's a lot of friction in the marketplace. And we're going to talk more about that. So I'm not going to dive too deep, but so many businesses, buyers started to realize if there's friction, I can just go somewhere else. And so a bit of brand loyalty started to diminish in certain industries more than others. But loyalty started going away because the more things felt hidden, the more they felt like they weren't accessible to the buyer, the more often they said, well, then I don't need to pick you. Maybe I'll go somewhere else instead.
Got it.
Hope that helps. Kim.
Connor, one last comment before a little bit of context too. As you're moving along, could you also explain to hotel sellers, because in the past, marketing not necessarily was a direct influence on impacting their sales numbers. And we're finding because of the third party element, right? Now with agentic search, the potential to eliminate those intermediaries. So I want them to understand the importance of why now is something they need to be cognizant of. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that, okay.
Yeah, Corey, it's certainly going to come up. And, a big piece of what we're all going to talk about today is the question of how do we control more of the conversation, but also be the source of truth for our buyers. More and more, we don't want to just hear it from from some random search query. We want to hear it from people we actually believe and who we believe is changing rapidly throughout the marketplace. So Corey, it'll certainly come up. Kelsey, to your question, is that where you're heading, Kim? Because I just saw it there. Kelsey, appreciate you jumping on in here. So would we say that word of mouth is more important than ever? I would say word of mouth hasn't become less important, but it is something that we need to spend more time and pay more attention to. In the past, I would say I saw a lot of brands, especially in this space, that loved when word of mouth worked, but probably didn't spend as much attention on it. But word of mouth is always going to be a great conversion point. It's always going to be an area where there's trust already built there because it's trust based on experience. But what we find is instead of word of mouth being this blind purchasing, instead word of mouth is usually that starting point in the buyer's process. Hey, I've got this trip or this event coming up. Any recommendations? Yeah, I would check out these folks. That's like the first thing that they do. And then it goes into that research phase, which we're going to talk about a little bit or a whole lot more really soon. So Kelsey, great question. Cool. Good, y'all. Well, let's keep it rocking and rolling. And Kim and Corey, I know you guys are going to have questions, but keep them rolling in the chat too, because I think it's important as we dive into each of these 4 pillars. So let's start with say what others aren't willing to say. And again, to put us in the right mindset, you don't have to literally close your eyes, but I'm going to close it just for the sake of example here. If you close your eyes, I want you to think about a buying decision that you made in the last 3 or 6 months, something that was significant. And when I say significant, think more than $500. And that's not always the highest threshold, but that's usually what I find is when people start asking, do I have to buy this or not? So for me, I'll use the example of I bought my car about 4 months ago. I had been leasing it. I actually made that purchase. When we start to dive into say what others aren't willing to say, where we have to start is, as buyers, where does our buying process actually begin? For a lot of us, it begins a lot further or a lot earlier than when we actually make the buying decision. So I use this car example, and then I want us to think about other examples. And if you have any, drop them in the chat too, because sometimes real examples make it valuable. So I'm going to use my car because it's a very personal, a lot of people can address it, right? So when I was going to be purchasing my car, I had been leasing it for 3 years. I was coming up on the end of my lease. I had to decide, am I going to buy my car or am I going to actually purchase it? Or am I going to trade it in? There's all these different options. I started that about 6 months before I bought my car in February of this year. About 6 months before, I started thinking through what are all the reasons that I could do this. I did tons of research. I started diving into all these different areas. And I was trying to better understand all the little options that I had. And could I trade it in for a new car? Could I trade it in for a less expensive version? All these different things. Price came to mind, all these other areas. And what I ended up doing is I actually went to ChatGPT of sorts and said, hey, here's my situation. Here's what I know to be true so far. What else do I need to be thinking of? And they shared 15 different questions that I needed to be thinking through. And the reason that this is so important is this is how buyers think, is we want to better understand every little component of that decision and all the micro decisions to the actual buying process that we have. And it's the same way for hotels, it's the same way for venues, whatever it may be. A lot of us spend a lot of time looking at the process before we actually buy. Reason this is, look at this stat here. 54% of event planners already use AI tools, very similarly to how I use them, during the venue sourcing process. So this is really early. This is like when they're starting to look into, hey, I'm trying to find this event space, big or small. They're using AI tools during the venue sourcing process. Why are they actually doing that? Because so many of us and so many folks in this space act like the ostrich. We are the folks that hide from the questions. And so we're going to AI and saying, can you help answer questions around how much does your product cost? Or how much does this do certain venues cost? What should I be budgeting? What can go wrong with certain venues versus others? How does it compare to other options? Instead of us doing 100 Google searches or going and looking at 10 different websites, we're going to AI tools and exploring, can you help me figure out which venues I should actually be sourcing before I'm actually interacting with the brands, before I'm reaching out to them? So when we think about how we need to show up as brands, so many of us are avoiding these questions and we're losing out on opportunities we shouldn't actually be losing out to because we're not willing to say what others aren't willing to say. And when I think of questions like these, and I think about that buying process of we're spending a lot of time researching before we buy, buyers are getting about 80% of the way through their buyer's journey before they interact with your brand. And this 80% recommend or it showcases what we call the zero moment of truth. Zero moment of truth being when a buyer actually says, I've done everything I need to do. I've gotten about 80% of the way through that buying journey. And then I'm interacting with your brand. Then I'm giving you a call. I'm filling out a form. I feel confident enough that you're one of my final vendors that I'm going to look into. This is how buyers are thinking. This is how buyers are buying. But so many of us, again, are avoiding the topics that we need to be addressing, that we need to be saying that others aren't willing to say. And instead, we're hoping that they're going to stumble across us and that we're going to show all these pretty pictures, but we're not actually addressing and educating the way that our buyers want to be educated. And so we're losing on this 80%. We're losing out on the opportunity to even talk with these customers. And when I think about how do we win the 80%, which if there's one thing you need to focus on after this conversation today, it's how do we win the 80%? When we talk about winning the 80%, we need to be addressing what we call the big five. It's the topics that buyers really care about, but so often we as businesses are unwilling to address. And I'm only going to talk about one of the big five today because we don't have enough time to dive into all those when we have to talk about the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand, but I'll introduce you to them at the end of this conversation. So when we talk about the big five, there's one that always, kind of makes our skin crawl. It gets us a little nervous, a little, I don't know if that's possible. And that's cost and price. When we start addressing cost and price, and I would imagine many of us are not talking about cost and price. And if you can, and Kim, let me know how many folks drop it in the chat there. How many of us are actually addressing cost and price on our website today? If I was going to guess, maybe 10%. And when I say addressing cost and price, I mean like we have some numbers, we have an idea of what it could actually cost for a venue, not just saying call for pricing, because that's kind of cheating in this sense too. I'm going to guess it's going to be a pretty low number, but we'll find out as it gets going there, Kim. But Kim, I saw your reaction right away. Are you in the same boat as me?
Yeah, no one's commented so far, but
Cool.
I am willing to bet that it's very low as well.
Deal. And that's fair. And also that's why most people say this. There's no way that I can actually talk about cost and price on my website. And there's three reasons people always say this. And there are three reasons that, while on the surface sound right, most of the time they're usually just smoke screens for I'm scared to actually address it. Here's the three reasons that people say they can't address price on their website. The biggest one is the it depends answer. It's the, well, there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of reasons that price can go up and down. We usually have to avoid it because we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves. The second one is we don't want our competitors to know how much our stuff costs, especially from whether it's venue pricing, whether it's room pricing, whatever it may be. We can't let our competitors know because then they're going to undercut us and we're going to lose out on the business. The third one is related to that. We're more expensive than other folks, and we don't want to scare away folks who are considering buying from us because our numbers look high or they feel high. When we use these reasons, or I'm going to just be honest with you guys, hopefully we're all at that stage here. When we use these kinds of excuses about addressing cost and price, there's usually a fear behind it. There's a fear that we're going to lose out on business that we could otherwise hopefully win. There's a fear of if we put cost and price out there, we're going to, showcase our brand in a certain way. But let's talk about each of those three key reasons, because when we bring them to life, we usually can uncover what happens. When we talk about it depends, or there's a lot of factors that can cause us not to address cost and price on our website, our buyers aren't looking for the entire, like, here's your exact quote. Our buyers don't know how venue pricing works the way that we do. They don't know frankly, how cost and price in general works to the level that we all do. Instead, we need to be educating them on how pricing works as an industry and then where you land. And I'm going to give you a formula on how to do that in just a moment. For the competitor side, look, there's two answers to it. Number one, competitors don't pay our bills. Our customers do. We need to focus on what our customers need in order to address that. But secondly, if you were going to take a guess at how much your competitors cost, I bet you could fall within 5 or 10%. Otherwise, one of you wouldn't be in business. You guys, and they're going to say the same thing, right? As competitors, they're going to know exactly what you charge or roughly what you charge. You're going to know the same. When it comes to we're more expensive, there's a fear of we're going to scare people away. I don't know about you, but it's very rare, and I work in sales myself. It's very rare that someone who isn't budget qualified is going to change their mind and choose to work with you. Instead, you're probably scaring away people who aren't great fits. But on top of that, when we talk about cost and price, this is probably the most fundamental reason why it's so important we address this topic. The buyer's journey starts and ends with cost and price. It starts with, what's the ballpark? What's a rough idea of how much this is going to cost? And we're just trying to gauge, am I ready? Am I qualified to actually be even in this conversation of shopping around? This is very early in that buying process. And then they go through that 80% that we talked about earlier. They do all their research, which marketing very much controls. It's the education before they buy. Then that big, bold vertical line is that 0 moment of truth when they say, I'm ready to actually convert and speak to you. And again, they've already started to qualify themselves from a budget standpoint. They go through, they convert. That last 20% is where the salesperson lives and breathes. It's where they say, I can, sell them anything. And right before they buy, they pick up the pen, they say, I'm about to sign the contract. They're going to ask the question, exactly how much does this cost? And if you fall within the range, that ballpark that you gave them earlier, they already are trusting you because you were willing to address this topic up front. And now they're saying, okay, cool. I understand why it costs this much. I'm ready to sign and I'm ready to buy with you. Now, I promised a formula about how to address cost and price because I'm more focused for you all on getting that first touch point, that roughly how much will this cost? I want you to win that conversation, because if buyers are starting there, that's where trust is built up front. And so these are the 5 things we need to be addressing. And whether you make a cost article, a buyer's guide, a pricing video, a pricing page as a whole, however, whatever formula or whatever format you create it, these are 5 of the key things you need to be addressing when we talk about cost and price online. Number 1, what factors drive price up? Remember, we talked about that. It depends. What are the factors that drive price up? Is it a head count? Is it, we're going to need more food? Are there all these different factors that could drive price up? On the flip side, what could drive price down? Maybe I don't need that extended room. I just need the first slot, and I don't need you to break down that wall for me. Take me through, what are the factors that drive price up and down? Number 3 and 4, and why are some venues or some businesses more expensive or less expensive? Are there corners that are getting cut? Are there certain expectations that are set? Most of us are more expensive than Joe Schmo down the street. Help them understand why some are more expensive and why some are more cheap. And then number 5, give them an idea of where you land. As long as you fall in that range, as long as you give them the reasoning for why you may cost more or cost less than others, they're going to now make a more educated, a more qualified buying decision about whether you're the right fit or not. And frankly, if you're addressing these 5 topics, you are setting yourself up for success, because you're building trust right away. You're saying what 99% of our industry is not willing to say. And number 3, we're just being more transparent. We're being more honest with our buyers. So when we talk about saying what others aren't willing to say, we're talking about how do we show up and educate buyers in a way that others are not going to. And I addressed one of the 5 of those big 5. These are the other 4. So we talked about cost and price. Problems. What could go wrong with? I heard that this can happen with certain venues. Tell me more about that. Versus and comparisons. Venue A versus venue B. Product A versus product B. Team A versus team B. Days, whatever it may be. How do you compare certain options so that a buyer can choose the option that's best for them? Again, we're always focusing on unbiased, truly educational content. Reviews. We want the good, bad, and the ugly. We as buyers, you think about like an Amazon page. Think about all these things that get addressed on an Amazon page, right? Why is it that every answer we need is always on that one page? These are the things, the topics that buyers always look for. And number 5, best in class. Think back to over half of folks that are planning are using AI to actually find the right venues to source. Best in class is like a home run. If we address, here's the top 10 venues for this event in this area, holy smokes, are you not only going to win the conversation and build more trust, you're also going to show up in search. You're going to rank better because you're controlling and owning the conversation from the get-go. Those are the big 5, and that's what saying what others aren't willing to say looks like. Kim, before we jump into number 2, any questions, any thoughts from the crowd, from the audience?
We had 2 that have pricing on their website.
Amazing. Good. I love it. And what I would challenge is, when we say we know we have cost on our website, think back to here. Are we addressing cost at this level? Or is this the place where we say we're confidently talking about this and educating our buyer, not only on the industry being the first 4, but on number 5 and here's how we land within that. That's the topic that I'd want us to keep in mind. And again, that's what saying what others aren't willing to say. That's just the starting point. That's only scratching the surface there. All right, team, let's jump into number 2. And this is show what others aren't willing to show. When I think about say versus show, say is kind of be the voice of your industry, be that educational voice. When we say show, it's be the face. It's show them, actually visualize everything. So we're talking about video. When we talk about video, when we talk about show what others aren't willing to show, this is why video is so important. 82% of all traffic will be video based in 2025. That number may sound crazy, but I want you to think about all the internet queries that we see. We see Google, but we also see YouTube. We see social media traffic, all of the different ways that people interact with content online. 82% of all that traffic is video based. It was about 80% in 2024, which I know that number may sound crazy, but you can go look it up. 82% of all traffic will be video based in 2025. But how does it apply to this industry in particular when we're talking about how we need to attack and address video? 43% of planners rely on online images and videos of venue spaces before completing an RFP. 43%. And this may sound like obvious of, yeah, they use images and videos. People want to see venues, for example, before they actually interact with them. Sure, but how many of us are actually putting video out there of our team? How many of us are putting video out there of walkthroughs of our spaces, of past ways that we've utilized our event spaces before? Again, I'm focusing on venues because it's easy to take the principles and say, are we actually showing what most other venues wouldn't be willing to show? And so I'm going to share with you are a couple different video examples, and all I need is a thumbs up from Corey or Kimberly to say that the sound is working. But I want to show you a team that we've worked with and that we've helped to train not only in creating great video, but in how we actually showcase what most others in our space aren't willing to show. So I'm going to introduce to you a team called Zion Springs. Zion Springs is a full service wedding venue. They do everything from planning to food to the actual space. They do all of that in-house. And what I want to share with you are two different videos that they have on their website that showcase how they can show what others aren't willing to show. So team, just let me know if this sounds good as we get it going.
What if there was a process where your wedding day was stress-free, where every single detail was planned out so you had an enjoyable, fun, and stress-free wedding?
Zion Springs is this country's only truly all-inclusive wedding venue.
We handle your website, save the dates, invitations, decor, menu, florals. We'll do all of the details for you so you can have your wedding stress-free.
Our services are tailored to fit any budget, so you get the most out of your investment. We provide a detailed breakdown of the total cost of your wedding, down to the dollar up front.
We make the wedding planning process and the day of your wedding fun for you and everyone involved. We're a team, not a collection
Connor,
of independent
are you waiting
vendors.
for
So
something
your
from
day
us? Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm playing it for a little bit. You're good, Corey.
Oh, okay.
Can I continue playing it for a little bit?
Yeah, we don't see it.
You don't see the video right now?
I
see
don't.
it.
Oh, you guys do? I don't see anything.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I see it too. We're good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, team. I appreciate. All right. So Corey's just throwing us off, but Catherine, Kelsey, thank you for making sure. We'll keep playing it, and Corey, we'll figure out why you
We'll
can't see
run
it.
nice and smooth.
We really care about making your wedding day everything you have ever dreamed of. As a family-run business, we've been making wedding dreams come true for over 400 couples since 2010. But you're not another number. You become family, and we treat you like one of our own.
We have 24 acres, 11 lodging rooms, and 6,400 square feet of barn to create a canvas for your special day. Here you can be as elegant or as down to earth as you'd like.
All right. We'll pause it there.
What?
So this is what we call the claims we make video. And the reason that we create a video like this, and I imagine some of us, and I want us to put some ideas in the chat. When you think about this video, what are some of the things that stand out to you? And feel free to either come off mute or drop it in the chat. What were some of the things that stood out as you were thinking about the principle of show what others aren't willing to show? Feel free, again, I'd love to throw them in the chat, but also feel free to come off mute if you're feeling brave, if you want to be part of the crew here. And otherwise, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you one as you're getting started, as you're typing things. The biggest thing that stands out to me, this is their actual team. So they're actually showing their team members. They're showing those pieces. Corey, authenticity, love it. Yeah, it feels authentic. It feels real. It doesn't feel as scripted or like buttoned up. It's actually showcasing their people and kind of the process. The piece that I loved most was when there was a woman, Debbie. She was talking about that cost breakdown. And when we talk about that cost breakdown, it's like, here's exactly what you can expect. So they're setting those expectations. Super direct in what they offer very early. Yeah, they're differentiating themselves, but they're also going to show we are their owner, John, said we're the only all-inclusive wedding venue in the country. And they show what all-inclusive actually means. Felt very approachable and heartwarming and genuine. I love those words, right? Like it feels welcoming to us. It makes us say, oh, I want to interact with these guys. They feel approachable. They feel like I could have a real conversation with them and speak about it. That's what we talk about when we say we can show what others aren't willing to show. They actually showed how that comes to life, the people that are going to help them, and they end up, and the video continues on. I cut it off after about 90 seconds or so. They actually show the venue space. They walk you through it. They say, here's how it all comes together, because they have lodging and staying as well. So they show the bedrooms, they show all the things that people are going to want to see before they actually even come out to the venue itself. Love the ideas in the chat there. Kim or Corey, anything else that stood out? Or Julie, I know your camera hopped off too. Anything else that you're like, yeah, this is another area that came to mind?
It just seems so wholesome. I mean, it's like talking to a neighbor. It's not like
Yeah,
talking to a
yeah.
business.
Yeah, and think about the difference of that, of like, imagine if it felt corporate and buttoned up. She's in the kitchen. They're actually at the piano. Like, it feels human in a sense. And again, they're showing things that others aren't willing to show. Kim, Corey, anything else that was standing out to you before we dive into a second video from the same team?
Yeah, no, actually, I love the illustration. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people on this Zoom call can relate. It's an industry standard. The exact opposite is to show an empty space with no life at all in it. So I just loved it. And it's, as you know, with our phones and it doesn't have to be a quote unquote a professional shoot. Obviously, it was, you know, obviously thoughtfully put together, but you could tell even the camera, the way it was jiggling a little bit, it wasn't overly produced, which makes it even much more relatable and approachable and believable and trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, they actually show at one point people out on the dance floor. They show what a filled space looks like. They show people having fun. And it's not intended in a way that is, hey, look at this staged video. That's actually from one of their case study videos of they do filming, and for videography, it's all included in their package as well. That's them actually capturing that footage. So it's pretty cool stuff. That's the claims we make video. And again, think about how that comes to life for your space. How can we actually show some of these components? How do we show that it comes to life? The second one I want to share with you is a little more conversion focused than the claims we make video. But let's take a look, and then we'll have a conversation about it.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and I'll be with you on your tour. This video is about what will happen after you fill out the form to schedule your tour. First, I'll send you 2 texts. One text is about the 2 videos that I'll be sending to you to watch before your tour. One is the answers video, which answers questions that couples commonly ask. And the next video is a personalized video from me on what to expect from your tour. Then I'll give you a call to find out what brought you to Zion Springs, what's important to you for your wedding, and then we'll review your budget estimate to make sure that it's a good fit. When you come for your tour, we'll be meeting in the command post, and we'll sit down and talk to you about your vision for your wedding and answer any questions that you may have. Then we'll walk the property according to the timeline of the package that you've selected so that you can get a good visual for what your wedding would look like at certain places on the property. Then we'll come back to the command post, answer any questions that you may have, and then watch an end of the night video which gives a great visual for what a wedding looks like at Zion Springs. And then if you are completely thrilled with Zion Springs and you can envision having your wedding with us, then you can reserve your date right there. And we make it really easy. All you have to do is pay a $2,500 security deposit and fill out a wedding agreement, which will have your wedding date on it. And you can do that right at the tour via ACH. Once you fill out that wedding agreement, then you can check that box that you've reserved your date for your wedding, and you don't have to worry about it anymore, because what that does, it activates an email that you'll receive from Laura Petrosino, who will be your event director, who will plan your wedding from start to finish. And via that email, you can schedule your kickoff call with her, and I'll be on that call with you. So go ahead and fill out the schedule your tour form, and I'll see you then.
Okay. So other than it being a really long, let's call it a run-on sentence of a lot of and this and that and that, an area maybe we can work on a little bit. I saw one right away, a detailed outline, details step by step to paint a picture. Amazing. Yes. It's basically saying, here's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to fill out the form. You're going to get 2 texts from me. We're going to schedule a time to come on site. Here's everything that's going to happen. Clearly set expectations while also encouraging them to be ready with items. Yeah. you're going to say, here's what you need to do to be prepared for it. You're setting the right expectations for them, both for what they're going to deliver, but what the buyer needs to do and the consumer needs to do if they're actually serious about doing this and buying it forward. Love what we're sharing in there. The other piece within there, and I think this is a small detail at the end, is they list actual names again. They say, okay, and then you're going to hear from Laura from our team who's going to help get that process started. All of these different components. The other piece is it's actually coming from Debbie. Debbie's the person you're going to interact with. You know, my favorite part is on our website at Impact. And we encourage the Zion Springs team as we were coaching them on delivering this is the person they're going to interact with is the person that needs to make this video. Because if it's not that person, it's going to come off as you're going to meet with a member of our team. It's very different than you're going to meet with me. Because then they say, I feel like I've already met you. I've already seen you on video before. Some other ones that we see in the chat, extreme transparency and trust. They're saying exactly what's going to happen. And Corey, I imagine if it doesn't happen exactly that way, we're going to lose trust because we're showing exactly what it's supposed to look like. If we don't actually deliver on that, something fell off there. Proactively answering anticipated questions. Yeah, we're getting ahead of the things they're going to be thinking about. Are we going to get to walk the property? What's going to happen if I fill out this form? Am I going to get spammed? No, you're going to get 2 texts, one about this, one about that, and then we'll schedule a call if we feel ready for it. That's exactly the kind of thing that we're setting. And then that step-by-step process. Yeah, we're making it easy for them to say, okay, I know what I'm signing up for. I'm going to give a whole lot of information, probably a lot more than just an email address to go and actually dive into this. I love it, team.
I
Julie.
love the names, adding the name, saying well, next you're going to be, because that means you're not just being thrown to the next team member in line. You know what I mean? These are people that have been there. And this is exactly who you're going to be connecting with. And that
clearly it's not their first rodeo, right?
Personal.
Like they know this
right.
process front and back. It feels like, okay, I can trust these guys because they clearly know what they're doing. We're giving that off to them and making it easy to trust us and lowering our guard of if I'm not ready for this, I probably shouldn't fill out this form. Because when we say the landing page video, what we mean is this lives right next to the form they're going to fill out on your website so that there's no questions of here's exactly what happens when I put this information into the form. Really well said, Julie. Amazing. Good stuff, team. So here's the question that I want you to leave with when we talk about show what others aren't willing to show, and then we're going to hammer through these last couple together. How can we be utilizing video to build more trust on our website? What are the areas, what are the friction points where we can be showing what others aren't willing to show that would build more trust? You don't have to answer that in the chat. I'd love for you to throw answers and ideas in right away. But just think on this question. It's an important one because video is usually a home run opportunity for us. That's it for show what others aren't willing to show. Let's dive into sell in ways that others aren't willing to sell. And if you couldn't tell already, buyers want more control. They want to have more control of the buying process. They want to have more control over how they actually make buying decisions and when they do so. So much so that 75% of buyers want a seller-free sales experience. Now, folks, I am a salesperson. I can promise you this stat does not mean salespeople are irrelevant. Frankly, they still own what we call about 20% of that sales process. What this stat really speaks to is 75% of buyers want less friction in the sales process. What they don't want to have to do is speak to a salesperson to get through more of that buying experience. It's shifting away from a selling experience and shifting into how do we create a great buying experience for our customers, not a great selling experience for us. And so the question I'm going to challenge all of you to think about is how do we reduce friction in the sales process and create a more seller-free sales experience? The way that we do that is through self-service tools. Now, our team here at Impact has developed and categorized 5 types of self-service tools. And I'll quickly introduce you to each, and then I'm going to take you through an example of 2 of them and how they come together. And it's in an industry that's a little less hospitality focused, but a little bit more of you can all picture it. So the 5 types of self-service tools that we've categorized: a self-assessment. Imagine you're at the beginning of your buying journey and you say, what kind of event venue do I need? Or do I need one at all? You fill out this self-assessment. It's going to give you an idea of your current situation, just to gather some info, get you started. Self-selection. What type of venue do I need? Do I need a large ballroom venue? Do I need a smaller one? Based on your event experience, here's what you need to create. A self-configurator. Build your actual solution. Give information about exactly what you need, how many people, the time of day, all these different things. Configure your perfect space. Self-pricing. Based on all the information I've given you, what's a rough idea of how much this is going to cost? Give me a range. And self-scheduling. When I'm ready as a buyer, can I go schedule time with you on my terms, or do I have to play banana phone or play email tag with you in order to actually get time on our calendars? Those are the 5 types of self-service tools. I'm going to introduce you to one, and it comes from a team called Shasta Pools. Now, again, not a direct industry example, but it's going to help you see how this comes to life real easy. So in around February of last year, Shasta Pools came to Impact and said, we need to generate more leads for our business. We need to create something that's going to allow us to really push March, April, and May, because those are our 3 busiest months of the year. So we built a new pool pricing calculator with the intent being that they can actually create their pool before they have to interact with a salesperson. And so what that looks like is a stage of about 9 steps, and they're going to pick what type of pool style would you like. I'd like a straight line pool. I'd like a combo pool. I just want a spa or a hot tub. They're going to pick which pool style they want. And you can see how this starts to educate the buyer on what the options look like, but they take it a step further and they actually put phases of the selection process. So this is a great educational opportunity of and there's about 8 steps. I showcase 4 of them here. Here's what it actually looks like in phases to build your pool. Think about how that translates to here's what the planning process for your venue event may look like. Again, using that example throughout. As you continue forward, select your water features. What are the amenities? What are the nice to haves? I didn't think that I want bubblers in my pool, but maybe I want that. Maybe I want aqua arches. Whatever the heck we need, let's give them some additional options other folks have asked for in the past. And again, this is happening without them ever interacting with a salesperson. And at the end, they fill out those 9 steps and they get an estimated cost of between $55,000 and $75,000. That range may sound massive to you, but that's what we're talking about when we say this is the start of a buyer journey. If they get that number and they say, God, I could never afford this, what a waste of time it would have been for our salesperson to be out at their home and to talk through all these beautiful things that they just filled out in this estimator tool, right? They fill out all these steps. What a waste of time it would be. And they say at the end, and that's going to cost you roughly $70,000. And they say, I thought this was going to cost $25,000. I can't buy it anyway. They're now getting educated on this before they have to interact with a salesperson. But see all the educational content on this page, and it actually scrolls about 5 times as long as this slide of all the educational content they're going to have about the options they picked. But there's a video. Wow, that's a lot of money. Talk through what we do next. If they're ready and they say that's within budget, I can book an appointment right there, or I can actually go get financing options and learn how I can finance this pool as I go forward. Now, we launched this tool in February of last year, and we said over these next 3 months, we need to generate a whole bunch of leads for your business. In 2023, during that 3-month period, they generated about 200 leads, just in terms of the business generate about 200 leads. In the chat, I want you to put a number. How many leads do you think that Shasta Pools generated in those 3 months compared to the year before? Again, in 2023, they had generated about 200 leads off of their website and all their engines for pools. Put a number in the chat. You can go as high as you'd like or as low as you'd like. Kimberly, 500. Anyone else that wants to throw in numbers? I'm going to give you about, okay, Corey. Anyone else can throw numbers in there. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds, then I'll share what they actually accomplished. Kelsey, really close. Thought about 500 or so. So in those 3 months, this tool alone contributed 700 leads to their business because no one else in their space was willing to give those buyers control and to reduce friction in the sales process. So we're talking about 3.5 times as many leads. They actually had to go hire salespeople because they had so many leads coming in. Now, it's important to say, did every lead become a perfect buyer for them? No. A lot of people might have filled out this form or filled out this pricing estimator / self-configurator tool like we were talking about here. They might have filled out this tool and actually said they disqualified themselves as well. So they were getting good quality folks, and they generated somewhere around, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the 20 to $30 million of revenue range from the leads that came in just from that tool in those 3 months. Those are like deposits, those are down payments, those kinds of pieces, because they were willing to provide a self-service buying experience. They were willing to say, you don't need to talk to a salesperson to get this information. Instead, you can fill out this tool. And now their sales team uses it every day. We launched that tool over a year ago. Every lead that comes through fills out that form. Why is that? Because so many of our consumers, they fill out that form. Think about all the information and data our sales teams are getting when we're learning what they want, what their timeline may look like, all the amenities, all the features. We're learning everything about that buyer. And then when they fill out the form or book an appointment with us, we know all that ahead of time. We're now creating more efficient sales experiences. Our buyers feel like, oh, I can fill all this out ahead of time. That's going to save us time. Great. I want to save time. We're removing friction from the sales process. And that's what Shasta continues to do. And that's what I encourage all of us to think through is how can we continue to remove friction from our buying process? Self-service tools is one example. There's a lot of different ways to be doing that. I would challenge each and every one of you to think back on your sales process today and say, how can we actually remove friction from our process? That's 3 out of 4. We have one more left, and I'm going to keep it simple for you because when we talk about being more human than others are willing to be, we know that AI is driving this. We know that AI has made it more about human interaction than it's ever been before. Kelsey had asked a question earlier, is word of mouth more important than ever? Of course it is. But being more human than others are willing to be is kind of a culmination of everything that we've talked about so far today. And how do we, show, how do we sell, how do we say what others aren't willing to say? That's how we be more human. But beyond that, I'm going to leave you with this one slide here about being more human than others are willing to be. We have to show our people. We saw it in the video examples. We saw it on our websites. We have to show what our company is actually made of. It can't be, we can't hide from putting our faces out there. We can't hide from putting video out there, but we have to find ways to actually humanize our brand like Zion Springs did. We have to be bold and we have to be different and we have to have a perspective. When we talk about say what others aren't willing to say, we need to address the topics others aren't willing to. That's what bold looks like. That's what being different than anyone else in our space looks like. That's what that quote we said earlier looks like. For us to get more customers, we have to do what no one else in our industry is willing to do. Number 3, we got to show personality. We are humans after all. We need to show that we are, but also we need to show what working with us looks like. We're not about, just looking like everyone else. We need to show who you're going to actually want to talk to and interact with. Number 4, we need to tell real stories. We need to talk about what's actually happening out there. We can't generalize. We have to tell stories that people connect with, empathize with, and say, I want that too. Number 5, we got to communicate authentically. And that's for email. That's also for social. That's however we interact with customers. We got to show up as our real selves and show up in a way that doesn't sound like a generic AI-generated email template. And number 6, we got to interact with buyers how they want to buy. We have to remove friction. We have to give buyers control on a guided experience. It's kind of like those weird roller coasters where they go down the hill and you can brake or you can go as fast as you want. We need to give buyers the control there versus driving it for them. That's what being more human looks like. And again, when you bring all these 4 principles together of saying, showing, selling, and being more human than others are willing to be, that's how you become that known and trusted brand. But guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I shared a lot of tactics today, and tactics make it tangible. They make it easy to understand. But what most teams need is they need a system, not just a set of tactics. And that's where, when we talk about a roadmap to endless customers, we have a book called Endless Customers that really brings this together and says, okay, I heard some of the things that this guy Connor talked about on this webinar that HSMAI put together. I need to understand, how does this all come together for our team? What you're seeing here is the book, but you're also seeing not only how Impact helps teams implement this, but the tools that you need to build trust, to drive sales, and become that market leader. So as we wrap up today, number one, I'd recommend that you read Endless Customers. You can find it wherever you get books. And if you're an audiobook person, the audiobook came out a couple of weeks ago. I think Corey's listened to it 2.5 times already, so he's well on his way. But you need to start with reading this book. It's going to take it a lot further than what we talked about today. But the second thing, and I'm going to get all this information over to Corey and the rest of the team, but if you're interested in learning more about not only this system, but how impact helps, you can email, just say HSMAI. You can email it to my email there, which is cdelaney@impactplus.com. I'll make sure that you get the slides from today's presentation. I'm also going to get you a digital mini book of Endless Customers. So Endless Customers, it's about a 300-page read or so. It reads faster than that sounds. But we have this mini book. It's only about 40 pages, a lot easier to digest and get you started, also easy to share with the group. And I'll include a calendar booking link if you email me whenever you'd like, very similar to that self-service tool. Schedule a call whenever you'd like to chat. What I'd encourage for you all is to think about, how do we become that known and trusted brand, and how do we do what no one else in our industry and no one else in our space is willing to do. That's it for me. I think we're right on schedule, so I'll call it there. But what I'd say is, if you guys have questions, if you want to chat more, I'm gonna be hanging around for a bit. Would love to talk more about what becoming that known and trusted brand looks like as we wrap up the day today. But Kim and Corey or Julie, anything else that's top of mind? Anything you guys are like, hey, I've got this question that I'd love to chat about, as people get them into the chat there.
Thank you so much, Connor. That was
course.
amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Would anybody have any final questions? Put them in the chat, come off mute. We can keep having the discussion. I'll give
Oh
it a
yeah, come off mute too. I
Yeah.
forgot everyone can actually hop on in. But what's going on, Kelsey? Welcome aboard.
Hey, hey guys. I have a question too, and it might be a can of worms, but as I'm thinking about being more human and I'm on the marketing side of things, so we have a heavy emphasis on brand and copy and all of that. I get a little bit pessimistic, I think, especially as things are rolling so fast. Like when I search, I'm skimming things, I'm not reading a lot into copy, and I'm just super quick clicking and moving on when I'm researching for travel and things like that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on um, all of that. Copy length. I want to be human when I'm writing, obviously, or with the content that we're creating, but I just have that pessimism where I'm like, is anybody really reading this? Is anybody,
Yeah.
how much time do I have to really make an impact and move forward?
Yeah, really good question. And it is tricky because while a lot of folks say, oh, the attention spans are going down and down and down, depends where people are at. Yes, early stages, 100% people are spending less time or just trying to move more efficiently. I like to call it the F word of the internet, of frustration, happens really quickly for folks. If they don't get the answer right away, they search again, they go somewhere else, they leave, they just stop working as a whole. You run into that a lot. What I would say is most important is what I like to call trust signals. And there's a reason that I don't talk about trust signals in this kind of talk, because it is a rabbit hole, to your point, Kelsey, and maybe there's some more that I can share with you. But when I think about how we can win, we have to win by putting trust signals out there, which doesn't just mean, put everything everywhere, but we need to show up where our customers are finding us and have those little moments where, I used to run communities a lot. And the world that I lived in when I ran a lot of online communities was, when someone has a question, a problem, a concern, an idea that they want to share, how do I make sure that they think of our community first? And it's the same way we have to act as brands, but that takes a lot of buildup, a lot of trust, a lot of seeing it over and over again. So to your point, it may not be I'm spending 10 minutes on a website, but I might have watched a 60-second video. I may have seen a post in a forum that I like. I may have gone to their website and looked a little bit. Kelsey, what I would say is, we have to find how we can put more trust signals out there, so that when the time comes and they say, I'm ready to invest my time, my money, my energy into researching it, those words mean a lot more, because they've started to build trust with your brand where they want to spend more time with you. But that threshold is harder to build than it has been before. So that's how I would start. it is a can of worms conversation, but happy to chat more with you if you're interested too. But I can attach some additional stuff if you're curious.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be
Sure.
great.
Definitely. Thanks for having on.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Because
Sure.
to Kelsey's point of are people actually reading this? And I'm trying to build trust, but how much would it be a fair statement to say, while if an actual human isn't reading it, but now we have to factor in AI and large language models reading it and taking that information, building trust with AI now to then feature it in the large language model questions? I mean, is it the same? Or should we be writing and creating content the same way?
I don't know if you can create content the exact same way. And there's a little bit of a moving target feeling to that of feels like whatever I create 6 weeks from now, it's going to be completely different, let alone 6 days from now, right?
Yeah.
That's where trust signals comes back. And I think what's so pivotal to that is there's moments where those words, Kelsey, are probably going to mean more to how does AI summarize this for us and how do we make it easy? You know, those best of articles, for example, are such a game changer when it comes to AI as well. So for example, we published this book. We had a previous book called They Ask You Answer. That's the top here, but this is 3.0. In the past, we used to say when it came to SEO, we don't include ourselves on the list because we control the conversation and everyone's learning from us about their competitors. We're stealing all that traffic, all that. AI's changed that. And frankly, it's like one of the bigger changes in this book is we have to be on those lists. We have to summarize ourselves. There is a optimize for AI to summarize kind of feel. And how do we make sure that we're presenting ourselves in a way where we are showing up when people are in that venue searching phase, that we're providing all the images, the information, the knowledge that an AI engine may need, but also what search engines need. We look at Google, to your point, Kelsey, we look at those AI summaries more than we used to a year ago because we actually feel like they're right versus you search about dieting and a unicorn image comes up, whatever garbage used to pop up where it was like, I don't know what it's doing. It's much more clear and correct than it used to be. So how do we optimize for those moments where we're moving fast? How do they tell us what we need and keep it moving? I don't want to say it limits what used to be done from a copywriting standpoint. It just changes what the focus is so that when they get to your website, they're saying, oh, wow, this is exactly what I heard before. That's what we're always talking about. So good questions, Kim. I hope that helped answer yours, but I know I swung back around too. So
No problem. There was a question in the chat from Veronica. You reach out to a location GM for an event, include a price base, and never hear back. Is it them not trusting or contacting the wrong person first?
Ooh, tricky one. And there's always a lot of, questions we could dig into with it. A little bit of potentially both. So I would say, you reaching out to a location GM for an event, you include all these different pieces, you don't hear back from them. What that probably tells me is they may not know or trust you yet. So there may not be as enough trust built where they say, oh, wow, amazing, thank you. At the same time, it may just mean that they're not actively in that buying experience yet. Yeah, contacting the wrong person. There's a number of things that can come up there. But what it sounds like is when you reach out to a location GM for an event, I'm thinking through that specific example because I can almost picture it. I would bet that they just don't know enough about you to say, okay, I want to chat with you. There's probably some more information we can provide that would say, hey, here's a trust building moment that would help you feel validated there. But Veronica, I don't know if you want to come off of mute and share a little bit more if you have the moment to do so, just so I can give you the best answer possible.
Here to listen. So because my association works primarily with our main contacts being general managers, that's who we reach out to first. Sometimes it's our board members because they understand our budget factors and what our needs are, and they attend our events frequently. And there are times that we want to look for new venues, and so reach out that way. And I've seen when I've done that, then they look up my LinkedIn and such. Quick follow up, maybe another aspect that we're flexible on the date or such. But yeah, just curious.
Yeah, one tactic or perhaps strategy that I would dive into there, and this is where a lot of teams that I think there's usually a low-hanging fruit opportunity there is if we're doing the outreach, what's an additional value point that we can add for them? What's that trust, an additional trust building moment that we can have of, okay, I understand what price looks like. And it sounds like, hey, I go and look up who Veronica is and I go dig into those pieces. What's something else that can lower their guard? What's something that they can say, how do I know that these guys are legit or not? How do I know that they're actually worth working with? How do I present that to them in a way that says, okay, now I get it a little more? One really quick win that could be possible there, Veronica, and look, I get people don't love video and they might feel uncomfortable being on video. Creating a one-to-one video when you're doing that outreach that says, hey, I'm Veronica, here's what I'm all about. I've included some more information. I'd love to chat. It does two things. One, it puts a face to the name, very similar to the Zion Springs example that we shared earlier. But two, it shows that you invested a little bit of time into them and they feel like they have to reciprocate that to you. All right, I'm going to at least give them the light of day because they put out this video for me and I gave it a watch. And now, one, they watched it, but two, they're very likely going to respond, even if they say, hey, not interested, or let me forward it along. They're going to feel like you invested time in them. They better do the same for you.
Thank you.
And you know what? I'm going to share something that just worked for me this last week that perfectly illustrates what you just said. Veronica, I sent 2 email follow-ups after a fantastic meeting with a prospect. No response whatsoever. So I did exactly what Connor suggested. I got on video and I sent the video through DM on LinkedIn. And then I sent a follow-up email and I said, did I read the room wrong? And I would try to keep it funny and lighthearted. And I kept the video funny and lighthearted. I literally finally got a response yesterday and we are going to be doing business together. So it worked beautifully. And the reason why I like LinkedIn DMs, it's not going to get caught in spam. You do have to be connected with them to do it. But I'm finding a better response through DMs through LinkedIn than email. And it's working great, especially with video.
Thanks. I'll follow up that way. Absolutely.
Super.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. I think
that'll do it.
Yeah, I don't see anything else in the chat. That was a great question, though.
Yeah. Thanks for coming off too, Veronica, and following up with it. I think it gave some good color commentary for us. So sounds like that's it, everyone, but really appreciate everyone diving in, bringing questions, bringing energy and excitement, and hopefully I can give the same there and you guys have some new ideas, some opportunities that you're seeing. But like I said, if you're interested, you can email me, cdelaney@impactplus.com. Otherwise, I'm going to get all this information and more over to Julie, Kim, and Corey and the team to make sure that they can forward it your way. But really appreciate the time and glad we could hang out.
Dude, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you. Julie, we'll be sending out the recording as well, correct?
Yes, everything will be sent out. I would say tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Once I have everything together, I will be sending out to all attendees and those that register.
And then it will also be posted on our YouTube channel at some point. So, yep.
Okay, great. Connor, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for the time. Very much appreciated. Learned a lot.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Guys.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.